All right, good morning again. Today, I want to kind of continue our discussion from last week, which was going through the updated buyer guide with some of the language we've added around, the the case with NAR and also the other things that we added to just around commission to be able to fully explain that a little bit better for our buyers to set the right expectations for them, understanding what is being offered by the seller, if anything, if that's something that they need to know in advance before they want to see a home in the event that they're in a position they can make up any commission gap or whatever. Also, as a reminder, I think best practice is just for all of us to use 2.5% on the buy side, and then kind of go from there. I know in some places you're going to see different numbers, and we just need to get used to that. That's why it's so important to really have these discussions as part of the consult or the strategy session up front. And just to build on that a little bit more, it's why, because we have to have an agency agreement in place to show a home now, it's so important that you really take the time to set that strategy session and sit down with these folks face to face or, on Zoom, either way, before you plan to meet at a property, even if they're going to sign agency or even if they've signed agency. That way you have time to really go through it in advance. So before we go any further, anything else on that? Any other follow-ups from that? For those of you that didn't attend, I did add that is now on our YouTube page under our mastermind playlist, and I also emailed the link out last week. Good?
All good.
All right, thank you. In that case, I'm going to jump into the seller strategy session and the selling guide and walk through this a little bit. So bear with me. Got my screen up. Everybody see that okay? Just a reminder, under the buy sell tab at the top, just go right here to the selling tab and you just click right here to open the guide. So it'll always be there. And the good thing about it now is I have a static URL for that page, which I can link the PDF to. So now that URL will always stay the same, and I can switch out the guides as we do edits and updates to the guides. So that way it makes it easier for things like email templates. The link is static. It's always there. That doesn't have to be changed. Don't forget, these are also in your dotloop template folders. It's also in the actual loops themselves. And it should be on the Google Drive, which is linked on the agent resources page on the website. And if you just need a reminder where that is, right here under resources, you got agent resources right here. Got a couple of things which are up front that are easy to link to, but then you can also go to the Google Drive and drill down a little bit more into a couple of other things. So I would suggest making sure you explore that so you know what's there, just in the event you haven't taken time to look at it lately. Just some stuff that easy that you might need that you can access anywhere. Okay, so the approach for the selling guide and doing the strategy session around the selling guide is very much the same as for the buying guide, right? We're here to set expectations. We're here to answer questions up front and prepare people to take the next step. Try and get ahead of the steps in the process so they understand, what happens in sequential order to make sure that we help you accomplish your goals. I always think that it's important, and that's why it's the second page, to explain our mission. And our mission is provide folks with the guidance and knowledge they need to comfortably and confidently make a decision about real estate, right? We give you the information. We explain the process to you. We tell you what to expect. We answer questions about what could or could not happen. And then you make the decision about how you want to proceed, right? I think it's always good to talk about our history. We're a family-owned company. We're small. We're basically a boutique, independent real estate firm. Tell them who you are. I think it's important. This is also where you want to make sure that they know who you are. If you really haven't shared your bio with them or anything, remember, you can tack that onto the very front of this which I sent to you guys, and it's also linked on the resources page. Tack it onto the front and start with your bio and then get into the guide. You can merge PDFs and then you've got your information right at the front. You can save it on your desktop and then drop that in your loop every time and send it directly, to the folks that way. That way it's got your information at the very beginning of that. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would say check it out and do that. If you have issues with merging PDFs and need some help with that, just let me know. But there should be a free app that you can download where you can merge the PDFs. And I had the bios updated, so they're also in landscape, so it flows really nicely. I always tell people this about this page, the process page, same on the buy side as the sell side. If you don't pay attention to anything else that I say, please pay attention to this page, because this is where we're really going to walk through step by step. And I'm going to ask you guys to chime in here and take a step. So get ready, I'll call on you. But where we're starting, this is the listing appointment. We're meeting today to discuss the reasons you're selling, talk about what's going on in the marketplace, talk about your home, and set expectations for what's going to come next in this whole process. From there, we go to preparing to activate. So either meet with our stager or meet with us, really to talk about making sure your home is ready for pictures, right? We all know what that includes, but any repairs, decluttering, cleaning up, all of that stuff. Pre-marketing your home, making sure that you understand where your home is going to be. We're going to put it in MLS, and because we have access to MLS and do that, it's going to show up on numerous other sites. It's also going to show up on our website, of course, Zillow, Realtor, all these other places as well, and talk about how we're going to work to drive things and drive views to see your property. So ideally, we get people in there. But as a reminder, the whole reason we want to get it ready and get it looking good is if people don't like the pictures, well, they're not going to come look at the house in person, right? So I'll zoom in a little bit. Hopefully that'll make that easier to see for you guys. I see Mark leaning in. You look like me when I'm trying to see something. Brandon, why don't you take the next line for me? Starting with 4. Is Brandon still there, or did he walk away? How about Janine?
Hey, starting with number 4.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So I tell them that once we've decided on the date that they want to go live, that's when we're out in the world. You're on Zillow, Trulia, Realtor, all the things, social media, and it's showtime. I set the expectation, and I always ask them if they want to get we use Broker Bay here. I don't know, you guys use Showing Time in the Triangle. Ask them if it's husband and wife or whatever, if they want to be on the notifications for showing. Sometimes if it's a vacant go and show, I think it's a good idea for them to have it so they know kind of what's going on. But also some people just don't want to deal with it, and they're just like, okay, tell me when the showings are. So have a conversation with them about how the showing process works to confirm showings. I say, if we get feedback, I'll share that with you. I'm trying to see what else that says on there. Officially on the market, keep you ready to show, be able to. Yeah, I tell them that, if there's any times or days that don't work for you, that you don't want the house to be shown. For instance, if people work from home, if they have crazy schedules, let me know ahead of time so I can block those in the showing app. But the goal is, the more opportunity we have for people to get in, the better you're going to have selling your house. So we don't really want to say no to showing requests that come in, but obviously there's always circumstances that we can work around. So I try to set the expectation out the gate with the showing situation that I need to get people in your house. We don't want to say no or cancel to the showing requests that come in. So let me know out the gate if there's times that don't work, so I can make sure I just block those ahead of time so it's a non-issue. Reviewing offers, I tell them that my job is to present the offers as they come. It's really just going to depend on, your situation and what you want to do. I get the offer in, I usually forward it to them. I'll send them a text and say, hey, offer in your inbox. Let me know when you have time to discuss, and then we'll review it. I always explain to them that there's no set way or rule or law that says a seller has to respond to an offer. I said, I'll set the expectation and say, it's up to you how you want to do this. I'm going to advise you, if you have an offer that comes in on a Friday and you wait till Monday, that's probably not best practice because, people are going to want to have an offer response as a buyer, within a reasonable amount of time. But it also is going to depend on, what kind of showing situations you have going on, if there's other offers on the table, things like that. And I really try to set the expectation with my sellers too. I said, it's best to do what you say you're going to do. If we have a conversation and you say, I want to wait through the weekend after an open house, that's fine. I said, also, if you get an offer that comes in and you love it and you want to shut it down, that's totally fine too. So just explain to them that there's no set way to respond. Everything is their decision, but try to guide them in the process. We have received an offer. We will review terms and respond counter. Yeah. So I usually just tell them when's a good time for us to discuss this thoroughly and how you want to respond. And then at that time, walk them through what their options are, what the offer means, what their net proceeds would be based on the offer in hand, all that good stuff. Going under contract. Okay, yeah. So explain to them when they receive the offer, you have options. You can accept as is, you can counter, you can reject. Once you get to a position where everybody's agreed to terms, um, I really try to stress that as a seller, I was like, once you accept an offer as a seller, that's it. You are committed. You sign on the dotted line. You can't change your mind. I said only the buyer can terminate a contract in North Carolina unless they're in breach, which is very unlikely that that's going to happen. So you need to really be very, very sure that once you say yes and you understand everything, you're good to go and this is it. I think that's just really important to do that. And then I say, once you're under contract, then the ball gets rolling. Buyer's attorney will have a copy of the contract. So the lender, the inspections will start getting scheduled through the buyer's agent. And I also tell them that April comes on board and helps them, the sellers, with their attorney and things like that.
Very good. Thank you so much. That's a lot of good detail to make sure, again, that they know exactly what to expect. Hey, Ashley, you want to handle the next line? You there?
I am. So the due diligence period, I'm sorry, my washing machine is going, y'all. The due diligence period is where the buyers are going to get their inspections. They'll get a home inspection, a septic inspection, sometimes the HVAC, and the appraisal will happen during that period. And it's all for negotiations of repairs if there are any. And I always say, you don't have to make the repairs, but if it is a material fact, then you should give serious consideration to that, because you're going to have to disclose it anyways if you were to go back on the market.
Very important. Good point. Thank you. Go ahead. Do the next two.
The earnest period, so that's kind of the same as the due diligence period, except for if they put any earnest money down, that's going to be protected in a trust account until 5 o'clock on the day that is specified. So if during those inspections we can't come to terms on repairs, or the repair is too big for them to want to move forward, they can terminate and they're able to get their earnest money back. And then the last steps, so you'll get clear to close from your lender, or if it's cash, then the attorney will draft closing disclosure, and that says who gets what money and where it's going and all that good stuff, and everybody reviews it together, and if it's all correct, then you sign it.
Pretty simple stuff right there. Just kind of to the point. And then really the last line is, okay, also you have to move out and all your stuff needs to be out by the closing day. And ideally you're not moving out on closing day. And also you want to leave it in good condition. You should clean it or have it cleaned when you move out. Leave it how you'd want someone to leave it for you. Also, if any repairs have been agreed upon, negotiated out, Ashley made a great point about the whole material fact thing. Make sure that you further explain that to them if they don't really understand what material fact means, that you have to disclose it now if something like that comes up. But if they do agree to repairs, we need to make sure that they're done before closing and get receipts and everything from whoever did them to make sure that we can prove that they were done. Closing is relatively simple for sellers. Usually you'll sign one document in person and you can sign the other document digitally now, and it's really a quick process for sellers. And then celebrate once the buyer signed everything and the money has been moved over and the deed is recorded with the county. You can celebrate. Your proceeds will be available from the attorney. You'll let them know directly how to receive those, whether it's a check or they wire it to your account or whatever. And then we can maybe go buy you another home. We'll close on your house that we got under contract now. Something like
I think
that.
it's also really important to make sure that sellers understand that they have to contractually leave all of the utilities in their name through closing.
Through closing.
Yeah, so that I was like, yeah, just you don't usually the buyer's agent will educate their people of when to move the utilities over.
Yeah. That is a really good point to know. I think that our first house we bought in Raleigh, the utilities were off the day we moved in. And I was like, this stinks. But anyways, so that is a good reminder for your sellers. You need to keep the utilities on and in your name through the day of closing. And the buyers should have it set up for their service to start in their name the day after closing. So home selling, what do we do? Here's where you want to provide your value, right? We're not just here to stick a sign in the yard and send somebody to take pictures and then write up a couple paragraphs description. What are we going to do? All right, we're going to start with a complimentary consultation. That's what we're doing, and that's going to include me giving you a market analysis and an evaluation of your home so we can price it correctly to the market based on the location, comps, condition, etc. Right? Also about your goals. I want you to get as much money as possible, right? You know why? I make more money. That's good for both of us, right? But here's the thing. If we don't price it right to market, it's going to sit on the market and no one's going to accomplish their goals. So let's make sure that we look at the data and explain the data so they can make a decision about where to start and then set those contingency plans, right? One thing that I always do, and make sure that you do this as well, is when you do a listing, you're going to fill out the estimated net sheet, right? And there's 3 columns. So you want to start with a high or ideal, a midpoint, and then maybe the lowest they're willing to go. And then you've got an example of their equity and what they would walk away with as far as their proceeds at each of those price points. And then the most, the least, and then in between, because if you're setting the price high to begin with and you're setting the expectation that, hey, we can start here, but the comps really say we should probably be here, then you've got a contingency plan to, hey, we're going to listen to market feedback. And if we haven't gotten the showings we want or the activity we want or the feedback we're getting is it's priced too high, then we need to be prepared to make a move in a week or two. And you already know what your estimated proceeds are going to look like at this other number. Make sense? Of course, we're always going to do professional photography and measurements. We want to do that because we want people to like the way your house looks online and want to come and see it in person. So we're always going to do that. We do not skimp on the marketing piece of that. And we've got some good examples of that. You can go show them current listings. You can show them past listings, any of that stuff. There's also information from Lighthouse Visuals that you can share as well, or whoever you want to use. But primarily Lighthouse Visuals, who I recommend. Interior design, we can bring a stager in instances where we need to. But what I tell people is I also work with buyers, so I know the feedback buyers are giving properties, and I also know the things that buyers are looking for. So based on that, I can tell you what you need to do to get your house ready, right? We could also do virtual staging. Pretty much all photographers offer virtual staging now. If that's something that you feel like a property might need, maybe it's vacant and it's a tough space to kind of visualize, we can always add that to a marketing package to help make it a little more easy for folks to wrap their head around. We've all worked with buyers who can see their own vision, whether it's full, the house is full of stuff or it's completely empty. And you've probably also worked with buyers who have absolutely no vision and they're not able to kind of picture how they would set things up. So it's good to be able to offer both. And I think increasingly now, especially with vacant listings, you'll see a mix. You'll see the pictures with the property vacant, and then you'll see some virtual staging popped in there as well, just to kind of give you an idea. We've got a full complement of trusted vendors. You meet with someone and you both agree that there are things that they need to get done before you're ready to list the house. And maybe they're planning on doing it themselves, or maybe they've got people they're going to use, but maybe they don't. And if they don't, that's where you turn to the team and you say, hey, we've got folks that we have used, that our clients have used for things like this. We can put you in touch with them, right? Kind of like somebody in the group was asking about a handyman. So, you know, just things like that. And then, of course, this is a full service experience. You know, I'm your point of contact, and I'm going to be here updating you every step of the way. I'm going to make sure you get feedback when we do open houses. I'm going to make sure you get the feedback left by other agents after showing. And then we're going to talk about what that feedback means and how we need to adjust, right? Further, a little bit more on our marketing. So how we approach is basically four-pronged. You've got printed stuff. You know, we're going to have materials in the property for people to look at, disclosures, flyers, etc. Digital marketing, that kind of goes without saying. We're going to be on the web in lots of different places. We're also running ads, you know, on social media. Professional photography, which we talked about, and also our agent database. You know, we send out our listings to other agents in our database that we've worked with before to make sure that they're aware of it as well. So we're trying to cover all the bases to get as many eyes on your property as possible. We're going to have great big yard signs. They're huge. They're the best yard signs. They're so big you can see them from a mile away, right? We want to get eyes on your property. And we've got the new ones that Mark has now, which I think are going to pop even better. And I want to thank Brandon for the idea to redesign the signs. Basically, they look like this kind of, but at the top, it's red. So the for sale really pops against the rest of the white and the blue background. I mentioned floor plans, explain why they're so important. We want to make sure that we have a relatively accurate number so we can, you know, tell people how big the property is, because we're pricing per square foot, right? So we want to make sure we have an accurate number. Also, it's good to show a floor plan to people. It helps them better visualize what the property looks like, especially before they go see it, hopefully to make them want to see it even more. We also do the Matterport 3D tours. There's also another thing that we're going to start offering, which I'm trying out now. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So hopefully they see that we're really doing everything we can to showcase their home as much as possible. I mentioned the marketing piece, social media. We're going to be running ads. We're going to be doing posts. We're also email marketing through Constant Contact, and of course, our website too. Just in case you didn't know, back to the website, if you come here and go to featured listings, it shows all of our current listings. It also, which I think is really kind of cool, it shows houses that we have under contracts for our buyers. If you haven't noticed that, it's kind of cool. Back to the selling guide. So, you know, also marketing our home, you know, the home, it's also on it's in our CRM. We can use our CRM to target folks for different properties, if you remember that, or from your Lofty training. Back to the photography piece, drone is a thing too. Drone is great, especially if there are neighborhood amenities. You know, all of our photographer just included in the regular packages drone shots like of the property itself, so you can really visualize the lot and the yard and how it's located relative to its neighbors. But also there's an add-on if there are amenities in the neighborhood, pool, tennis, any of those things, make sure you're selecting that for your package if those are in a neighborhood that you have a listing in, so people see those as well. Okay, don't forget those.
Doug,
Well,
off topic a little bit.
Sure.
For the drone, like if you're wanting like drone footage of a neighborhood for a listing or whatever, do you have to reach out to the HOA to get approval for that first, for somebody to be flying a drone through the neighborhood, or can you just schedule it?
That's really up to the photographer or to do, whoever does that. They handle permissions for where they're allowed to do that and not. I don't think it's really by HOA. It's more likely by township or something like that, or county rules.
Okay.
But
I get-
they know
I-
what they have to do to get approval to do that, because I've had photographers tell me that they can't do it in certain places before, or they have to get approval first, or the drone has to be a certain size.
Well, I think around here on the coast, a lot of times they'll put them up and they'll say like, "Oh, I can't because it's restricted airspace." Like I had one that Josh was doing, and I think it was like in the flight path for Onzo Hospital's helicopter. So he's like, "I can't do pictures. I can't do drone pictures today." So I don't know if it just depends on like the flight pattern for the day or what, but I've had him tell me before like, "Oh, I can't today because of this." So I don't know what's up with that.
And that's a good point. And thanks for asking that, Connor. That's something you can always check with the photographer about and ask them. And even if they can't do drone photos of amenities, they can still do regular photos of them. So I would make sure the amenity stuff is always included. And then if you can do drone, great. Brandon, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just ran into this in my neighborhood. I don't know to what degree they can enforce it, but my neighborhood has said that if you fly a drone anywhere in the neighborhood without permission, that they'll fine the agent. I don't know if they can get away with that, but you know, if you're wanting to have your photographer do stuff, neighborhood amenities or something in an area where you're already aware that it's going to be a problem, you may as well just be proactive like anything else. That would be my opinion. How
Yep.
they would be able to tell who it is, I don't know, but I mean, again, if you're asking for a fight, you should expect a fight. That's kind of my opinion.
To continue on, this is the owner's prep list for photography. I think it's a great thing to include, because there are some things in here that, like, I definitely want to make sure that I see are done, like toilet seats left down. I told my kids yesterday, I don't want the toilet seat up. Close the toilet seat. I definitely hate when I go into a house that's for sale and the toilet seats are up, or I see them in pictures. So it's just little things like that. You want it to look as appealing as possible. Nothing about an open toilet seat says appealing to me. That's my hill to die on, I guess. But this is just a handy list to make sure that people are aware of. You definitely don't have to read it line by line, but make sure you point it out and make sure they take note of it and use it, right? This is for them to provide you a little more information. And obviously they're not going to fill this out unless you print it and give it to them, but it's more of a reminder than anything. Hey, make sure that I'm aware of these things. Tell me about additions you've made to the property. Tell me about the upgrades you've made. What year did you do it? You know, what are some notable features that stand out? I want to make sure that I put as much info in the listing remarks as I can, because I'm trying to tell a story to sell your house. So make sure I'm aware of all the really good things. If your listing remarks are, 2 paragraphs and 150 words, you're probably selling your client short, unless it's a vacant piece of land. And even then, come up with something, right? So sell it. If you struggle with being creative and loquacious, I guess, go use Chat GPT.
And I always, to that point, that's a great idea. I always use AI. 'Cause I swear to God, the worst part for me about listing a house is writing the damn public remarks. I loathe it, and it takes me like too long to admit. But I always make sure that I ask my sellers, is there anything specific that I might not know right now that you want me to highlight in your public remarks that I might not know about? And then I always, after I have it written, I always proof it and send it to my clients, be like, hey, this is what's going to be in the public remarks. What do you think? And sometimes they're really good, like, oh, because I had one is like, can you mention the school that's walkable? I was like, I can't use the word walkable, but I can definitely put the school. And I had just forgotten about that, so I think it's good that, to communicate with your sellers. So, because they're paying you to write this and to do this. And so they have to like and approve what it says. And so I think that is really important to make sure that your sellers are good with it and that you're not missing anything that they would specifically want.
I think it's a great idea to share it with them and make sure that you're not missing out on anything. I would be very careful about saying, can you approve these? Because I did that, and it was a nightmare. And the person completely rewrote the whole remarks, and I was like,
Oh,
the hell if I'm ever doing this again, because it was terrible. So I would just be very careful. Hey, make sure I didn't miss anything. You know,
exactly. Yeah. Hey, this is what I wrote.
but I think it is great to share it with them because, just like sometimes people want to see the pictures before, you upload them. I'll do that too. And, just for what it's worth, you don't have to use every picture that the photographer sends. They send a bunch. We might not need 4 pictures of the laundry room, so be smart with that. And then just an aside, I really think that it looks so much better when you put the pictures in order from exterior front, coming through the front door, exploring the first floor in a sensible order, exploring the second floor in a sensible order, back porch, back deck, whatever, backyard, and then maybe like drone photos, amenity photos. I always put the picture of each floor plan in individually. Those are always the last pictures I put in a listing, not the combined one, not first floor and second floor together. I'll put, like, if it's 2 floors, the first floor picture and then the second floor picture, just because buyers don't have access to MLS documents. So they have to ask their agent to send them the floor plans. If it's in the pictures, at least you can get an idea. Maybe it's hard
That's
to
a
see
good
because
idea.
it's small, but
need to do that.
I think, and I do it because I've wanted it when I've been looking at properties, right? So I think that's a good idea. You've already got them. You've already got the PDF. So just save it as a picture and then upload it at the end of the listing. Seller closing costs, because of course they have some too. Just so you're aware, this will be kind of notated on the net sheet that I'll send you and that we talked about earlier. But so outside of paying off your loan, of course, you're going to pay the deed prep for the closing attorney. It's usually less expensive for sellers because they're doing less work. You're paying the excise tax, right, which we'll estimate on there for you as well. The prorated share of the property taxes. Make sure that you're doing this on your estimated net sheet and doing it correctly. You take the tax bill that you can find in the CRS tax report that's linked in every single listing in MLS. All you have to do is click on it and scroll down so you can see what the taxes are for that year. Divide it by 12 and then multiply it by the month that you think they're going to close in. And then that's the amount that goes in the line. Okay. Again, doesn't have to be exact. It's an estimated net sheet, right? Of course, your commission, the total commission, if they are also offering a buyer side commission, fees associated with the loan payoff, basically just, the balance, and any other costs, if there's closing costs, something like that. Typically, you're not going to estimate that at this point. Now, if you get an offer that's a little squirrely and different than the numbers you did on the original estimated net sheet, we'll go back and update it. Just make sure they sign it again if you edit the one document, okay? Because we do need to have that signed. You can go back and edit the numbers. Just either start a whole nother document net sheet or make sure they sign that one again. Any questions about that? Okay, great. Forms. Hopefully we know how to do these without really hitting them over the head. You got to do the working with, right? You need to do that while you're doing the strategy session, of course. Then you're going to want to explain the offer to purchase to them. Of course, the front page is the most important because that's where the financial numbers go for the most part. But you also want to make sure that you take the time to explain about, fixtures, what conveys automatically, what doesn't convey. Make sure you take the time to ask them, hey, do you want to take the fridge, washer, and dryer? Are they negotiable? Are you planning on leaving them anyways? I always tell my folks, I'm not going to say up front that you're willing to leave them behind because we want to use that to negotiate, but it's good for us to know, right? Whether you're planning on taking it or not. That way, if I know you need them, we can say it's a non-starter to begin with. Also, if there's anything that's not going to convey, we want to take the alarm system. Well, it's a fixture, and unless you tell them it's going, it has to stay. So you got to make sure you're asking that now. You don't want to get under contract and they're like, oh, well, we're taking the alarm. Oh, well, no, you're not. It's a fixture. Oh, well, you didn't tell me. Well, technically I did. It's in the thing, but don't rely on them to read every page. make sure that you're having those discussions with them. Also, if, you know, grandma's chandelier in the dining room, anything like that. Any questions about that? Okay. Moving on through that. Professional service.
Just make sure that you put in agent notes in the MLS what doesn't convey so that you get offer appropriately addresses it.
100%. If you already know alarm system, front porch swing, grandma chandelier, put that in the agent remarks so the other agent can see it.
In addition to that, because I ran into this with a listing agent a couple of months ago, if you're the listing agent and you know that your people don't want this stuff to convey, and especially if you don't have it in an MLS document or you didn't put it in the agent remarks like Janine just said, which is a great idea, it's your job as a listing agent to check the actual OTP and make sure this stuff is not included on there. That's what they're paying you to do. So be advised of that.
100%. Good point.
Yep.
The professional services disclosure, for the most part, they're only going to initial one thing on this, and it's the pictures and measurements line. That's really the only thing the seller is going to select, at least at the beginning of the process. They're going to waive everything else. And that's unless you're going to set up an appraisal for them or you're going to set up a home inspection for them, something like that. Because typically we're not going to know what attorney we're going to use. Any questions about that? Okay. Our handy dandy overview of standard contract form from the North Carolina Realtors. Just a great little tool to help them recap on their own in layman's terms the different parts of the offer to purchase. Commissions. Now, here's the thing, because what's usually the first question you get when you go to a listing appointment? What do you charge? You know, what's your commission? Okay. So we save it for the end for a reason, because it's usually the biggest question. And we're doing this completely different than we were doing a couple of years ago, but even a year ago, because we've made a lot of changes to this over the last year, which I think are great, because the whole purpose is to give our clients, you know, more choice. So this is what it is. Just so you know, rules changed this year. If you hadn't heard about the NAR lawsuit, let me explain it to you. Basically, we're not allowed to advertise to buyers through MLS or to buyers agents what, if any, commission that we're paying. In the past, sellers offering a commission to the buyer side, it was always listed in the listing, so it was readily available. Now we're not allowed to display it that way, but we still need to discuss if you're going to do it and the reasons to do it, right? So, what are some pros and cons of actually offering a commission to a buyer agent, sorry. Enhanced visibility, right? If you're a buyer, when you go under agency with your buyer agent, the buyer agent is going to say, I'm expecting to make X amount of dollars or X percentage on the home that you sell. And so if the seller isn't paying that and we're not able to negotiate it, you will have to make up the difference. Does that make sense? So if me working with a buyer has that discussion with a potential buyer client and they say, I'm not in a position to pay that amount of money, I can't do that, then what I have to tell them is, okay, would you like me to make sure that we know if that's being offered before we see a property, if that's a non-starter for you? And then if they say yes, then a buyer's agent might not show the property because the buyer has said, I can't make up that gap. There's no reason for us to see it. Does that make sense? So that's just something to be aware of. Now, agents aren't going to willfully say, I'm not showing that property because they're not offering anything, but they should be disclosing to their client if it is being offered, if they've been requested by the client to do that. Does it make sense? So by not offering it, it could decrease the amount of foot traffic that you get or the amount of showings. Any questions about that? Okay. So by offering it, ideally, you're going to have more opportunity, more buyer opportunity. Now, some cons of offering it. Well, obviously, it's going to cost you more. That's going to come out of your equity, but it could be worth it, right? And of course, by not offering it, you could also have less traffic. Does that make sense? So, just to give you an idea, because we love data, here's some data from earlier this year about percentages that were actually being offered at the time and closed properties. And as you can see, the large majority, the highest percentages were in this 2.5% to 3% range. Which again, there's not a standard, but there are averages that stand out, right? And higher percentages. So with all that being said, we've come up with a few different options for our sellers, not only to select the package you want to best market your home, but also to discuss what, if anything, you want to offer to a buyer's agent. So we have 3 packages, right? And each of these packages include different marketing items. And you can see the percentage for each of them here. Our premier packages, our Old North State package is 4%. It includes the other 2 packages plus a pre-market inspection report, a highlights video, the 3D tour, and a minimum of 2 open houses, right? The Longleaf Pine package includes the Cardinal package plus staging, consultation, repair advice, internet ads, minimum of 1 home open house.
Did you change this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we changed this a while ago.
No, because that used to say 6, 5.5, 6, and 6.5.
Yeah. Let me finish. And then the
Okay.
Cardinal package is our base. This includes everything. So our minimum listing option is 3%. Then we've got our mid-tier at 3.5% and our top tier at 4%. And you see what that includes. Now, this is the listing fee. We recommend 2.5% buyer agent compensation on top of these. You can see right here, Janine, it says that.
I'm sorry. I couldn't see that. I
No, it's
see it now.
okay.
I'm sorry.
I
Yeah.
purposefully took it out of the overall percentage.
Okay.
They're not tied to each other.
Correct.
This is our fees for these options.
Okay. And if you
recommend,
want to add on, got it.
we recommend 2.5 to buyers on top of this.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to do is disassociate the two,
Yeah.
because what we're not doing is saying it's 6%. And
Right.
out of that 6%, 2.5 goes to the buyer, because we shouldn't
Right.
be presenting it like they don't have a choice.
Right.
We're presenting it, which they always have. We're just breaking it down a little bit further and saying, this is our listing fee for these options, and we recommend 2.5 for the buyer agent for the reasons we talked about above. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if I have a past client and I automatically am going to do 5.5, I have to, just explain to them that the 2.5 is on top. We recommend 2.5 on the other side on top of this. Okay. Got it. Got it.
You guys know this page. Congratulations, you're under contract. Just kind of setting the expectations for what's next. April's going to come on board. We'll let you know about inspections, etc. We'll make sure the documents get everywhere they need to go. At some point, we'll have to get some information from you to the attorney so they can do their job, and we'll keep you posted along the way, etc. Any questions? If you haven't spent a lot of time looking at this page, you need to do it to make sure that you can really articulate, because now this is really the most important, if not second most important slide in this whole thing. It's a menu. It's options for the seller to select. So we're not saying we only do listings for 3% or whatever. We're giving them options to pick. And this way you're not negotiating your commission and still offering the same packages. So we're not negotiating. These are their choices. Which one do you pick? Does that make sense? And then of course, like we always have, if it's a past client, someone that you've done multiple deals with and you want to reduce, as we've talked about doing before, you can certainly do that. We're not advertising that up front. We're certainly not advertising it to everybody. The important thing is if they pick that 4% or that 3.5%, you need to make sure that A, you're ordering the right things from the photographer and getting the right things done, right? And B, that you're letting me know so I can make sure the ads are run for the right properties on social media.
Yeah, I had a client pick well, before this came into effect, it was before all this changed, but they picked the biggest, well, whatever,
Old North.
yeah, thank you. And I was like, okay, so yeah, I mean, I definitely came out of pocket a lot of bit more for the marketing and stuff. And they said, this is why we want this. And I'm like, okay, so here we go. And it was a non-issue. So, I mean, at first I was like, oh God, nobody's gonna want to pay this amount and pick these packages, but I've actually had a seller pick the big one.
Same thing.
Yeah.
But you got to make sure that you're delivering on what they asked for, right?
Yep.
Or what they agreed
Yep.
to. You got to make sure you order the right things. And like the property highlights video, that's a couple $100, but I know Brandon
Yes,
does a lot
it
for
is.
his listing. If you're not comfortable being on camera, you don't have, it doesn't have to be you. It can be the video walkthrough,
Yep.
music or whatever, but make sure that you're getting that done.
And which of those packages does it include the drone photos?
Drone is really included with all the photography.
Okay.
So
thinking that-
Lighthouse here, Mark, will include the drone. I use Home Dimensional for some of mine that are like outside of Onslow County. They like I have a listing appointment tomorrow and I called them yesterday and it's like same price for floor plan and then the pictures. And then if you want a Matterport, that price has come down a little bit too. So I think it was like $475 for me to get, but it's based on the size of the house as well. So for like 2,000 square feet, it was like $475, included the floor plan, the Matterport, and the pictures. And he's like, if it's just one picture of a pool or whatever, then they're not gonna nickel and dime you for amenity stuff. But if you want drone stuff with Home Dimensional, it's extra. But Lighthouse, I did get an email, Doug. I don't know if you did too. They had to increase their costs as well a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but they do include drone pictures, Mark, for their package with Lighthouse. Most of the places are usually a la carte, but I usually use Josh for everything, and then sometimes I'll use Home Dimensional for other things.
Thanks, Janine.
Any questions or other points to make or clarification about any of this? So, just to recap for everyone's benefit, if you've seen both, this used to say 6.5 and this used to say 6 and this used to say 5.5. But we took the buyer side out and put it here now. So you need to make sure that you're articulating that. This is what we choose, or this is what we offer for our services for these packages. Which one would you like? We suggest and recommend offering this to the buy side, but that's up to you. You can offer nothing. You can offer less. Hell, you can offer more if you want to, right? This is what we recommend based on market conditions. It's completely your decision, but make sure that you understand the pros and cons of what could or could not happen, depending on what.
I like that.
How's that gone so far?
Like that. Yeah.
With that discussion, Doug?
Good.
Are they saying, yeah, that's great, or no, I don't want to pay any, or no, I want to pay more than 2.5? I mean, I'm assuming a lot of them are wanting to not pay that, but they know what's good for them. They do, but there's someone always trying to get it as little as possible. So like in this way, I like it. but it also looks like almost they can get away without it.
Well, and I think that's why it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we really do these pros and cons and hit this before we get to the options, right?
Yeah.
To make sure that they understand. I haven't, and granted, I hadn't had a ton of listing appointments since we rolled this out. I haven't had anyone say they didn't want to offer anything to a buyer.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
good.
Mark, what I try to do when I'm talking to my sellers, and I think it's really important, is that having that conversation with the seller and being like, listen, if I'm a buyer's agent, this is the situation and this is what it looks like. It's in your best interest, in my opinion, to
Yeah.
compensate a buyer's agent, and this is why. And then go through that. And I've literally never had a seller say no. They're like, well,
That's
yeah,
good
that
to
makes
know.
total sense. Exactly. And they and quite honestly, most of the sellers are already that I've been working with are already like, I've heard some stuff about commission, and then they're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I can't believe you're dealing with that. Yeah, of course, we're definitely going to want to compensate a buyer. So I haven't gotten any pushback so far from my sellers about compensation. Obviously, it's negotiable, it's their choice, it's whatever. But I think that if you present it on the flip side
Mhm.
for the situation, hey, you're going to be getting offers from buyer's agents. So like try to just let them see what the flip side looks like, and it might help them see the picture better, making their decision as far as what to offer and how much to offer.
Yeah, yeah. I know how, I think I know how to argue it, but I was just wondering how people were feeling when they came to that. Was that something you did need to then go ahead and argue, or was it almost argued by itself because they had an idea and you've gone through the other bit? So I just was wondering at that point how much more then you would have to, with what's happened so far, how much more you'd have to actually discuss that, or if that was much more of an understood point, because it is so new and it's like everybody
Yeah.
thinks this changes a lot. It doesn't change really much, just as how it's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
So they're thinking, oh, now we don't have to pay. I think, or did we before? And so I think a lot of it has to come in with the changes with the NAR. So then a lot of people will see it as that being part of it, I'm guessing.
I mean, honestly, nothing's ever changed. It's just people were misinformed.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
like they just
Yeah.
didn't understand it properly to begin with, because it's been negotiable from day one. And of course, not all agents are created equal. There's discount agents for certain reasons. And so it's all about you get what you pay for, and just making sure that they understand it properly. And that's why it's like Doug was saying, it's really important that we have this figured out. You can say it in your sleep and you can have those conversations so that you guide them properly. I personally haven't gotten any pushback. I don't know if Brandon or Ashley or any of the other agents have.
Right. No, but I like it. It looks a lot, more affordable this way. I have to say at first, chance, and that it takes it out. It's not your fee. It's a fee you were reserving for someone else, actually. So it is good. It's out.
And, let's talk about, we can just spitball for a few minutes. Let's talk about some objections you could get from this. I'll start with one. Well, why is your fee higher? Why do you get more than the buyer agent?
Great question.
How would you answer it?
There's a lot more to do on the listing side to begin with. I'm doing all the your investigations and making sure that your material facts are up and you know what's neighboring and you have everything done and squared away. A lot more documentation, preparation, photography.
I'm paying a
I
substantial
think
amount
there's
of money to get your house marketed for the most exposure, to get as many people in the door as possible and give the best impression to as many potential buyers as possible so that we can get you the maximum return of investment. That's what I say.
I think that's it. We are spending a significant, we're investing a significant amount.
I should say that. That's a better way to do it.
To
Yeah, I
market
like
your
that.
property. We're investing a significant amount to market your property.
Between photography, and they're like, well, what is that? We'll say photography, ads, signage, open houses, all of the things listed right here.
And that's why you have an option to choose how
Yeah.
much you want your house marketed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, show them this. I mean, my
Yeah.
stager is $350 for 2 hours. Measurements is $195.
Mhm.
Video, you don't have to tell them the price for everything, and I'm not going to because it's really not
Exactly.
my business.
Not the
But
business. Yeah.
between
exactly.
us talking as agents, my neighbor down the street, I had to buy a brand new sign, which was $400 just to get the sign in the yard for our HOA. So before the minute the home goes on the MLS, I've already spent about $1,800 in marketing.
Yep.
So you just have to be able to, one, have the confidence to have a hard conversation with someone and know
Mhm.
that if you don't get it, you'll get somebody else, but
Mhm.
explain it in a cogent way where it makes sense and they can understand it without sounding like a jerk at the same time. I do
Yeah.
say I'm spending, but I'm glad Doug brought this up because I will change my language now and say I'm investing a substantial amount of money in marketing your home to put the best
Yeah,
impression
I like
forward.
that.
I'm also doing a lot of stuff that other agents don't do, like
Yeah.
bringing to the stage or yada yada yada. And if you know
Yeah.
what you're going to do and are confident in what you're saying, you'll be fine. But definitely something worth practicing.
Yep. He's working from home. Sorry. He's on the phone.
That was great. I don't know what it was, but it sounded funny. Anyways, I hope that was helpful. I can tell you unequivocally, the relationships I start with buyers and sellers that I take the time to really go through these strategy sessions and the guides are so much better than the ones that you rush into. And especially now with buyers having to have agency before you show a house, if you're doing it any other way, you're setting yourself up for a harder time than you need to. So take the time, help them understand the value in sitting down and spending 30 minutes, give or take, to go through these things, to set the expectation. They're about to either buy or sell one of the biggest investments they've made in their life. It's worth the time, not rushing into seeing a house, right? So help them understand why. Make sure that they know it's important to you that you set the right expectations and that they understand the process.
Yeah, I mean, my listing appointments are always between at least an hour, sometimes two, depending on how lengthy the seller needs me to be as well and how big the house is and stuff like that. So it's definitely thorough.
Yeah, but for a reason, right? There's a lot of moving pieces. Also, they have choices. Also, they have other things they need to consider. So let's make sure that we are doing our job and thoroughly explaining the stuff, especially around the process, the commission stuff. It's their choice. They have options. This could potentially happen based on what they choose to do. Great. Well, that's all I've got. I'll stop the share. And I guess that's really it. Anybody have anything else? Super.
So
duper.
quick question,
Yes.
if for all you guys, if you have somebody who doesn't want to offer buyer agent commission, how do you proceed? Or do you still take the listing? Does it make you reevaluate?
I'm going to take the listing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to say no. And I think it would be bad for us to have a policy to say no. I think that might be illegal, honestly. So I definitely don't recommend saying no. I think you say okay, just to make sure that I've explained to you why, and you've chosen to do this, and also be prepared that they might ask for it anyways, or they might ask for it in the form of closing costs.
Or your
Okay.
house just sits on the market for a long time. No, okay.
Well, or I mean, you can always go back and say, well, look, this is the amount of showings we've gotten. I've had 8 agents reach out and I've told every one of them that you're not offering anything, and 2 of them book showings after it. You know what I mean? So if you're working with a client who makes that decision and it's completely their decision, make sure that you're tracking the data so you can tell them. Which
Can
might
you
convince them.
renegotiate that after the fact? Like if they say, I want to offer a buyer agent commission, and then 2 months in, they're like, wait, I changed my mind.
Absolutely, you can. You
Okay.
just need to update the agency
The
agreement.
listing.
And also, what you need to make sure that you're doing is it's required to put a percentage that you're offering the buyer in the listing agency agreement, the buyer agent in the listing agreement. When you do that, it's in the Loop templates now. Go ahead and fill out Form 220. And after you get that showing request, forward that 220 to the buyer agent. So they know, so they don't have to call you. You don't have to wait for that phone call. Get ahead of it. Be proactive. They're going to say, oh, well, guess what? They just got back to me. They're offering it. Let's go. Make their job easier so they want to sell your house.
And advertise it on social media.
Yep.
And everywhere else except MLS, what you're offering.
You know, that's a good point. We can make sure that that Quinn is putting that information in when he markets properties for us on social media. I hadn't thought about that. Thank you, Janine.
Yeah, and quite honestly, when I get all agents send emails for all their new listings, and I actually had one property that came through my email, and it just happened to be the property that I was showing to my clients. I was like, oh hell, it's already in the email. I don't even have to ask him what they're offering, and it was 2.5, and so it was good. So, do we send out? We don't send out emails for new listings to the MLS agents anymore, do we, Doug?
We don't send them by property, or like for each property, we'll send out ones with like properties that we have on the market at the current time.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's really important that when you guys have a listing go active, I need you to, it's probably best to email me so I know, and I know what's being offered. So, and if you're doing an open house, so I can let Quinn know. So please take the time to send me that, and please don't text me. Please email it to me.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I've got. As a reminder, next week for Mastermind, we're going to do open house procedures in the new era after the lawsuit. So please plan to attend that.
Cool.
You guys
Sounds
have a
good.
great day. Thanks so
Thank you,
much
Doug.
for chiming
Thank
in
you.
and for participating.